Hello, and welcome to the Godless Bitches podcast. This is your host, Beth Presswood, here with Lynnea Glasser.
Hello.
And AJ Johnson.
Hi there.
We are a podcast sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, which is dedicated to the separation of church and state and the promotion of positive atheism. So, how is everyone today?
I'm doing well.
AJ?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
All right. Well, we have our special guest, AJ Johnson, here today. And we do not have some of our regulars, Tracy Harris and Jen Peoples. They could not be here, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna have a threesome here.
Well, thanks for having me on, y'all. I do appreciate it. I just started working with American Atheists about 5 months ago. I was telling Beth that I really, really do appreciate the accent. It's foreign up here, and a lot of Yankees, and it's one of the few things that makes me feel like I'm not at home more than others. But so I'm the development director, and what that means is I basically handle all of the fundraising things for the organization, the membership program, and at this moment, a lot of the direct mail and communications pieces as well.
So if people wanted to help out American Atheists, what's the best way that they could do that?
Well, of course, you can go to atheist.org and click the contributions button, or you can volunteer with us. You can come to the Reason Rally. I think that's the number one thing that I would like to get across is we're having the largest secular gathering in world history on the National Mall on March 24th of 2012. And I really just want to, encourage everyone that can to make it.
Yeah, I'm really, really hoping that Matt and I can come. Don't know about the jobs thing, but yeah, that seems like if you can make it anything this year, make it to the Reason Rally.
And there are a lot of other good things going on. And, our national convention is the day after. And all of this is in Washington, D.C. or the Washington, D.C. area. Our convention is in Bethesda, but it's, connected on the rail system. So it's really easy to get to. But there are lots of things. But number one, I would say, because it's a movement-wide thing, it's not just American Atheist or just Freedom from Religion Foundation or American Humanists. It's everyone that you can think of, just about.
Yeah,
sounds
really awesome. For our military friends, there's also something going on as well.
Yeah, and that's in my home state of North Carolina.
Woo.
They're putting on Rock Beyond Belief. And I believe that is the week after Reason Rally. So if you are in the southeast area, I've been saying, and you can't make it as far, perhaps, or if you have better connections in the Fayetteville area, then definitely make it to Rock Beyond Belief. It's going to be more of a music festival, and there's a lot of controversy in the history there. So I think that this event is happening is the big take-home message for sure.
The latest thing I was seeing on all the Christian blogs and right-wing blogs was that some band that's going to be playing at Rock Beyond Belief has a music video where they are singing in front of burning churches.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, my God. They were flipping out about that.
Well, you know what they say, any press is good press.
Yeah, because that's nothing. That's nothing. Shocking imagery and music, whatever.
Sure, Madonna and lots of other folks have used that just to get a rise out of the same populations that are giving them a rise, so works out.
Well, churches tend to burn a lot because they have those really high steeples, and they tend not to realize that they need to put lightning rods in as well.
Yeah, at least some of them.
So
yeah.
they kind of have this trust thing, and they don't really think about it, so...
I think that's so interesting, the concept. When I see a high steeple with a lightning rod, I think that in and of itself is enough to turn you atheist, or should be. They don't even believe it.
Yeah, they have no faith in God's
Exactly.
will not to burn down their church.
And then when they do have faith, it does catch fire.
But if he does burn it down and one Bible or picture of Jesus survives, that's a miracle.
Yes.
And then they'll try to put it in a memorial site.
Yes.
I think that's just saying that Zeus missed that much.
So I guess I should. I guess I can say a little bit more about my background and why I would be an interesting person to talk to, other than my winning personality. So I'm an African American female. born and raised in the South in North Carolina. And I'm, of course, a Black atheist, which is somewhat rare, not completely rare, and becoming less rare with time. But it is, somewhat rare. I'm also bisexual, and I'm, like I said, the development director for American Atheist, and a lefty, but that isn't as important.
It's quite the triple minority. I was privileged enough to go to such a liberal hippie college that they had a class on Black queer rights.
Wow.
Wow.
I know, right? So I was pretty privileged.
Yeah,
Was
I
it
thought
an easy A, or did people take it in all earnest?
I think the people who took it were really into it, and so it ended up being an easy A because everyone there was just, really, it was really interesting. So I would recommend it if anyone's going to UCSB and they still offer it, take it because it's really good.
Cool.
Now you'll get lots of letters. This was the best class. Thank you so much, Lynnea.
Yeah.
Well, we're always happy to get mail that we've made a positive difference, and we get a lot of that. We've gotten some hate mail too, and we love that. I love hate mail. I'll just go ahead and say it. But
yeah.
So AJ, since you brought it up, and we might as well just delve right into this question because we get it all the time here at all the ACA things, and we're pretty white organization. Not that we discriminate in any way, it just sort of happens. Why are there so few active black atheists, AJ?
Well, there are a lot of theories swirling around about this, and I think that it's not one or the other. I think it's definitely all of these things coming together. And I would say that the primary reason is a concept called intersectionality. It's essentially when you have multiple minority groups in one identity, it creates a lot more problems than just having one or another. So this conflation of all of these different minority groups can create a situation where the individual is more oppressed. And of course, if you're feeling oppressed, you don't want to air out another minority on top of the ones that you can't get away from. So African Americans are obviously black and they live their lives as African Americans. If they're atheist, they can choose whether or not they want to be open about that. So they can choose whether or not they want to take on the extra burden of that. And understandably, a lot of them don't.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's one theory.
Yeah, it's definitely tough being that double minority and having to deal with the issues of both discriminations on both sides.
And I also think that there's, and I guess this is not necessarily completely separated from the other theory, but the fact that there's not a lot of pride in education and science education specifically. And I would definitely trace my questioning of religion back to evolution and learning about science. And I don't think that that's highly valued in the African American community right now.
That's too bad. And that's definitely something that needs attention. And, I hope that it does get a lot of attention.
I also tend to hear a lot of theories about the power of the black church in the community. How influential do you think that is?
I think that it is influential in some parts of the community, but I think that it's declining, just like I guess being churched is declining overall in the United States. I think it's also declining in the African American community, but there's not really anything else there. The church did provide and does provide a hierarchical social system and network within the African American community. So they're able to, amongst themselves have a whole community with different, benefits to that and pitfalls. But I don't think there's anything inherent, of course, about the church or the God belief that helps the African American community. I think it's just the social networking element of it, and that could be done without nonsense.
Do you think religion has been especially harmful to the African American community?
I definitely think religion's been harmful, and it continues to be. I struggle with this because every time you talk to an African American, whether or not, and maybe not every time, but a lot of times, if they're not outspoken atheists, they have either a belief in belief where they, why not let them have it? Of course, I think it's silly, but Grandma really, really likes Jesus, and who am I to take him away from her? Um, or complacency. It's well, God put me in this situation and he never gives me anything more than I can handle. Let go and let God. You hear all of these defeatist rhetoric, and they don't understand that this belief that's supposed to be helping them is actually creating a situation where they have no personal accountability, and they don't necessarily believe that they can elevate themselves above where they are.
I'd like to say, in addition to no personal accountability, that it also takes the responsibility away from the system as well. It's not just the individual.
Oh, that's right. And a lot of this is I hope that I don't come off as victim blaming. I certainly don't want to. And even as far as African American atheists that aren't out of the closet. I completely understand why someone would choose not to do that, and don't want to come off as if I'm, blaming the victim in that situation. Not that you said that I was, but I wanted to be really, really clear about that. I definitely think that it makes it so that the policies that the taxpayers levy against the public are not as important. You don't see as many people upset about it as might be if they didn't think that, God was watching out for them.
Sure.
What ways do you think the atheist community, what steps can we take to, make atheism and skepticism in our community more attractive, I suppose, to African Americans, or welcome them more? Or what steps does American Atheists take to increase diversity?
Well, they hired me, and that was really great. But other than that, we have a really close connection with Black Atheists of America and Black non-believers. There's also a African American branch of CFI, African Americans for Humanism, I believe. So we just have good connections with these groups. We're giving them tables at our convention. We're making sure that they have a presence. We're making sure that our convention has diversity in it. We want to make sure. I think there's a long-term and a short-term approach. The long-term approach is going to be very long, and I think that we're only going to see the fruits of it over a generation. But the short-term approach, I think, is happening and happening quickly. We have these organizations, the three that I mentioned, and the mainstream organizations are being very welcoming. So as long as African American atheists that are thinking about it now are looking at the movement, then they can see themselves in it. And I think that that's really important. The long-term strategy is to increase the importance of science education and critical thinking and rhetoric and these things that are not really prominent in all of society, but especially not in minority societies like the African American or Latina communities. It's not just African Americans, it's the downtrodden in general. And I think that putting an emphasis on education will really help that in the long run more than anything else.
Yeah, I see that happening just, in the South. I went to a school that was primarily white, but it was still a very anti-intellectual climate in the whole state.
Yeah.
Was that a poor state or a poor community?
It was, Tennessee, it was it was lower middle class, I suppose. But there were other poorer places around, and even in the middle class places, you would not see an intellectual, emphasis at all.
Yeah, I think it's an undercurrent in the whole United States right now. Unfortunately, there's kind of an anti-intellectualism, and to be smart is somehow untrustworthy. I think that the people that are not very smart and know it, to be juxtaposed with the people that are not very smart and don't know it. But the people that know that they're not, they have other skills, but they're not, maybe the intellectual group, they feel like they might be swindled somehow by the really smart people. So they're distrustful of them, even though they tend to have everyone's interest in mind, I think.
Well, a lot of people are just proudly ignorant. They are
That's true
ignorant, proud of it, and they don't want to learn, suspicious of everyone who does. And I don't even know how to deal with an attitude like that. People in my family had that very attitude. You know, don't get too much schooling, don't get too much learning.
Right.
You need to quit that thinking. Oh, yes.
Is that a phrase that hits home?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think that is definitely a problem that we're contending with. Now, I want to ask you two, do you think that it is going to become more of a problem as science advances? Because I think that it is. I think that that's potentially what we're running up against. This religious idea losing ground and the cognitive dissonance and, the behaviors that come with that.
I feel like science has just advanced so much, but all along the way, people have been just dragging their feet against it, and it's ridiculous. I mean, if you compare the technology to just a few thousand or even few hundred years ago, the advances are ridiculous. So it's going to happen regardless.
Yeah, I think that we might already have a split developing of people who are getting with the program. And the people who are, standing behind trying to drag everyone else down. And there's, like these two curves. Everybody on one side, the anti-intellectual side, and everybody else that's, learning and wanting to develop things. And, I don't know what it would take to try to get everyone on the level.
It's kind of funny because you see these kind of splits within the church of the Christians who are, young Earth creationists who are pissed off at their fellow Christians for believing in evolution and saying, well, that's just some way that God could do it. They get pissed about that. Or you'll see Christians who are, saying, oh, we don't hate you for being gay, and then the other Christians are pissed about that. And they got to catch up because that's where reality is going. And it's just slowly but surely.
Yeah, well, every step forward, a backlash comes.
Yeah.
We have to be so extreme in everything.
Yeah, I think that we're kind of coming up to the edge, though. I don't know. I mean, with nuclear weaponry and, such big armies and the capability to annihilate each other, how much more we can play around with the idea of people dragging their feet. I mean, climate change is real. We really do need to be realistic about the way that the universe is.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just don't know how much harm it's going to take. Like the anti-vaxxers.
Sure.
It's a great example.
Yeah, they're now, measles is endemic. Everywhere, pertussis is coming back with a vengeance. And I think we're seeing a little bit of slowdown in the anti-vaccine movement, but it took kids dying.
Which is really unbelievable. I mean, in the 21st century, it's a privilege to be an anti-vaxxer, right? I mean, there are only anti-vaxxers because vaccines work. If vaccines didn't work, of course there wouldn't be anti-vaxxers. Their children would be dying everywhere. They only work... This idea only works because of herd, immunity.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of
it's definitely a facepalm kind of thing.
Yeah, we got off on this, and there's just no resolution to that. So
well, what's interesting?
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say what's interesting about that one, and it's a great example of just nonsense taking over, but it's not necessarily theistic. It doesn't really necessarily, involve that you think of a God. In fact, it has nothing to do with that, really. So it just proves that New Age is just as dangerous as theism.
Oh, yeah. Skepticism is extremely important. If everybody would become skeptics, I don't even care that they wouldn't necessarily be atheist, all of them.
Now, do you think that, and I guess this is a rabbit hole of a conversation as well, but do you think that is possible to be a skeptic and not an atheist?
Not a good skeptic. But if you were skeptical about every other thing and then you put that God belief in a box and didn't let your skepticism get to it, I think if everybody did that, I still would not agree with them having the God belief, but at least we'd get rid of anti-vaxxers and alternative medicine and all that crap.
I was in that situation for a few months before I became an atheist. So it's possible to be a skeptic.
Yeah,
Right.
but you weren't looking at your God belief skeptically. You know, you would put that in a box.
Exactly, yeah. So I would have considered myself a skeptic because I hated all these ridiculous anti-science claims. Mm-hmm. And then someone asked, well, is James Randi an atheist? And I was like, what do the two have to do with each other? So
and then it clicked.
Yeah, then it clicked.
Yes, we come down swiftly on one side of if you let your skepticism get to everything, you will be an atheist.
Yeah,
and skeptic organizations don't like that, but just the way it is.
Yeah, I think that it's skepticism is what we want, because we see a lot of non-skeptical atheists. I have people call in about aliens, and I have heard people espouse beliefs about ghosts and say that they're atheists in the same conversations. So I mean, it clearly is not a worldview or a tactic or a way of looking at life to be an atheist, insofar as it allows, is either the product of your skepticism or how you see your humanism. I think atheism is kind of a one-dimensional thing, but it allows for or complements other things.
Yeah, it's just a position on, one claim.
Right. Sure. But that claim is just so important, and the coming down on the other side of it has produced so much harm that I think it's a really, really important question and an important claim.
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess I'll talk a little bit more about my job, because I really like it. It's kind of a cool gig. I used to raise money for scholarships for my alma mater at UNC, which was also a really, really great job. I really like advocating for something I feel strongly about, whether it be education or atheism. So what I do, I write letters to our supporters that we have already, or to try to get someone to support us if they, are somewhat interested or have reached out to us before. But the thing that I grapple with the most is why would atheists want to give? Why would not believing in something create the urge to give money to an organization that advocates not believing in something? Well, of course, we do other things, and we lobby limitedly, and then we also have lots of legal challenges and things like that. But at the heart of it, we are trying to make atheism more mainstream, and that is kind of a hard sell for people to make. Have you ever had any experience trying to fundraise for atheism, either of you?
Not particularly. I haven't. The ACA just kind of takes whatever comes in, and yeah.
Donate to the ACA. It's a great organization. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. I just did it.
Yeah, and was that difficult? Because people find it very difficult to ask for money, even, as a soft ask like that was. Just, come find us and give us money if you'd like.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I worked for a nonprofit where I had to ask people for money, and it's a tough thing to do, because it feels like a very rude kind of thing to do, but it's really necessary. And churches have no qualms about that.
Exactly.
They pass out trays weekly where everyone puts their money in, and you glance around and see who's putting money in, and you can give someone the evil eye if you don't think they're contributing. And there's this great amount of pressure and acceptance, and atheists tend to be more.
We definitely
principled.
don't pass a collection plate.
Yeah.
Nor would I advocate for that, but
Sure.
I think you're right. I mean, the religionists certainly do have a hold on what it takes to get people to part from their money in a way that I don't think we want to, but should certainly stand in awe of, because we're not making pennies to the dollar of what they're making. We're making fractions of pennies to the dollar of what they're making. And if we're thinking about this as an intellectual battle, we're not doing a very good job of supporting our side.
Yeah, I mean, all these court battles and things to fight separation of church and state and all that costs money. And, the vast majority of things like podcasts and whatnot, this is volunteer stuff.
Yep.
We work all day and then we come do stuff like this and
drive across the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really it's a labor of love for most of the people in the movement right now, and I'm very lucky to be a full-time atheist. I get to say I'm a professional contrarian for a living, which is really nice. But it's just not something that has gotten a lot of steam so far. We have less than 1% of atheists involved in the atheist movement in any way. We really need more people to care with their feet or with their wallet. It's nice to write blogs. It's nice to complain. It's nice to, talk about how the religious right has taken over and, how hard it is to live in our country because of them. But if you're not volunteering and helping or cutting a check, you're probably not helping. And I think that needs to be part of the messaging too.
It's a pretty strict message. I agree with that. I support that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is kind of harsh, and I think that's kind of the American Atheist stance in the movement. We're kind of on the edge, and I'm kind of on the edge of that too. But I think that as far as fundraising goes, I would never ever want someone to give more than they possibly could, and I think that just is common sense. I don't think that anyone should. The churches make you feel that you need to, but we're not the churches, and we will never be. And there's no amount of money that someone could give us that would make us a church. But we do need to give some, I think.
What does American Atheists do with our money?
Right, that's a great question. So we have membership structures, so people give different amounts, and a basic membership is $35, and with that you get access to our website, you get a magazine, and you donate to pay for the salaries of right now we have 3 full-time staff. We're going to hire more. All of the money that came in from our legal challenge goes right to our 2 ongoing cases. One of them is the 9/11 cross case. I alluded to that earlier. We're trying to get them to remove the 9/11 cross, quote unquote, from the memorial. It's sitting in there. Yeah, Baron?
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that they are saying that it's part of the memorial, that it's part of the history of that day. And I don't know how many times you can have different pieces of rubble fall before something resembles a cross and a Christian calls it such. But apparently, God was too busy to prevent it from falling, but had enough of them fall down for that to happen. I don't support that on so many levels that it's not worth delving into, but that's one of the major fights that we have going on. And we also travel around and give speeches trying to make atheism more palatable to the general society.
Well, a lot of atheists I know don't actually agree with you on the cross case.
Yeah, they let them have their cross, right?
I hear a lot of people saying that American Atheists, in particular, also FFRF, but some of the cases they consider not worth it.
Do you think that I would agree that we do need to be very, very careful about what we have our legal, our limited funds going to, and our clout and social standing. I think that's very important. The 2 cases that we have are the World Trade Center cross case, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And we also have a case going on in Kentucky where the Homeland Security Office has a plaque that everyone must agree to that says that their security is somehow based on the sovereignty of, quote unquote, Almighty God. And it actually says Almighty God on that. And that's part of their Homeland Security. So I think that we're trying to, these are very much separation of church and state issues. We're trying to keep God out of the government because putting God into things is dangerous. The cross case is really important, and I feel very strongly about it because that's what faith is, what caused 9/11. We should not return that overzealous faith with a show of overzealous faith. There's nothing special about that cross, and that's why I was harping on about that, because I think that if there were something special about that cross, then that would be evidence for God. If there's anything special about it, then we're wrong. But there's nothing special about it. It's just rubble, and they're putting it up there, and it's almost this desperate act of saying God didn't abandon us on that day, but God doesn't exist. And I think that is what they so desperately don't want to wrap their heads around, so much that they're willing to violate the Constitution and all of our rights to do it.
Yeah, and there's a case to be made that if you don't fight what seem like small battles in church-state separation, that, you don't really have, what do you go after? I mean, if you don't fight what you can fight or what's going to get you publicity, then, what do you fight?
And I don't think that 9/11 and how we remember it as a nation is a small case. I really disagree. If people disagree with the case and why we're making it, then that's one thing. But I don't think that they should be able to disagree or should disagree. Of course, they're able to do whatever they'd like, but that they should disagree based on whether or not they think it's a big deal, because I think it's certainly a big deal.
And definitely nothing erodes our credibility more than to see this kind of infighting from the outside. When atheists say, well, this isn't important, that's not important, it says to everyone else, don't take us seriously. When we complain about something, just ignore it, because it will take care of it internally, and you won't have to deal with us. That's why, even though, Jews are a much smaller minority than us, they get taken seriously, because they have a pretty uniform, they support each other. And that's kind of what we need from atheists, is this kind of, well, we might disagree on small things, but I'm still going to get your back.
I think that's fair to a certain extent. I like that we police our own, and I think it's important. I think that we over-police our own, and I think that's what you're kind of getting at. Yeah. I wish that we could get people to fall more in line with things, but we have lots of different ideas because we just don't believe in gods. It doesn't say anything else about what we do believe or what our values are beyond things that relate to that.
Yeah, it's the whole herding cats thing.
But I think that's a cop-out. I think that when we give up on getting our community behind us, that we're doing ourselves a disservice, because to be taken seriously, like you said, we do need to gather our influence and gather our voices to be heard.
So what would you say are the major goals of American Atheists?
I think our major goal is to create a society where reason-based living is the standard and not the exception. I think we'd really like to see atheists in politics, because why not? They're people. I think that we realize that we have a long way to go before that's something that's possible, but we really want to be a part of it, and we've been a part of it since 1963. So moving forward, we just want to make sure that we stay relevant and stay on the cutting edge of what is popular and what isn't. And we want to stand up for atheist rights, no matter how unpopular it is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The history of American Atheists, I mean, Madalyn Murray O'Hair, love her or hate her, she was the force for atheism. You could not talk about atheism without talking about American Atheist and Madalyn Murray O'Hair for quite a while in this country. And then, when she was killed, I think American Atheists went through some issues and kind of maybe fell off the map a little bit for a few years. But, with Dave Silverman, I've seen y'all come roaring back and really become a force in America.
Yeah, Dave is great. I can't say enough good things about him. As a boss and as a leader of the organization, he's really got a firm handle on what what we should be doing legally and as far as our publicity goes. We have a strategy. The strategy is to be on the edge, because we want to pull the middle. We want to say the things that American Humanist Association would never say, so that when they do say the things that they say, it seems completely normal. Don't believe in God, you're not alone. These very subtle things, these messages that are not very harsh, but got a lot of criticism when they came out, are now way closer to mainstream because we say, it's a myth.
Yeah, that is a great point. That is a huge point, because I see all this fighting, accommodationist and confrontationalist and, I hate the it's a myth stuff and da-da-da-da-da.
Nope.
No, when American Atheist is the bad guy, I suppose, and when they go out, all out, strong, it just makes everyone else look more moderate, look more central. And it eventually brings the discourse over to where we can talk about these really are myths.
Exactly.
I think it's great. Have you seen there's been a push, this was on Friendly Atheist, to put up the most non-offensive atheist billboard ever in order to show that Christians will still bitch about it.
Now, what
and
have
I
they
heard
come
Christians
up with?
bitch about it.
Well, they haven't actually put it up yet, but I think they're going to. It's just going to be like the cloud background, and it's just going to say atheists. And going to see how many people bitch about it. Because I guarantee you, they will. Because it's about our very existence. It's not about us being anti-theistic necessarily.
And it doesn't matter what we say. I think that that's exactly the right message. We should just say what the truth is, because they're going to complain either way. I think that that's hilarious, too, because it points out that by saying who we are, some people think that it's inherently offensive.
Well, yeah, because we're saying they're wrong.
Right.
I mean,
I don't like that.
Somebody being a Muslim is sort of inherently saying that Christianity's wrong, but they just don't see that quite as much as they do when somebody says, I don't believe in, your entire religion and belief.
Or any of the other ones. None of them.
Well,
yes.
I think the Muslim can just be mistaken or misled by the devil, but someone saying that, it's all wrong, it's just such a fundamental affront that it just throws them off.
Yeah, and I think that if you're another religion, you're still buying into a mythos, right? So you're still kind of doing the whole I believe in fairy tales as a grown-ass adult thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that they're willing to play along with you, as long as you're willing to play along with that whole idea.
Yeah,
definitely.
So
even Scientology, even something that's completely off the reservation will get more acceptance than saying you don't believe in any of it.
Yeah, as long as you believe in something.
Which is insulting too, right?
Yeah, because, we believe in stuff.
Lots of things. But no, atheists don't believe in anything, capital A, anything.
Y'all believe in nothing.
Right.
Just a bunch of solipsists.
Well, that's it too. They really do a good job of projecting what they imagine atheism would be like onto us, regardless of, the lives that we lead. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, tons of other performers and different personalities. We're not rare, but they want to make it seem like, or unsuccessful, but they want to make it seem like we lead hopeless lives.
And we just want to sin all the time.
Well, that's true.
Right, that one thing.
That's
is true.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know though. Oh, go ahead, Lynnea.
It's just a PR battle, and that's the only thing that religion has going for it, is this PR campaign, because they don't have anything legitimate. So they have to do this thing where they vilify the other, and they have to do this thing where they promote themselves. And that's part of why they're so good at getting money and fundraising and, spreading this indoctrination, is because that's the only way that they can stay in business. And it's kind of tough for those of us who have reality, because we just have reality. We don't we our, PR doesn't matter.
I sort of zoned out for a minute. I thought you were talking about the Republican Party. All of the last 30 seconds, it just seemed like you were talking about the GOP there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's the same sort of deal. I would say, that's why it's kind of tough for fundraising, especially for atheists, is because we're used to having just straight up reality, and it's kind of weird to have to defend reality. But that's what we end up having to do.
Yeah, I don't think reality needs defending or prettying up or anything. It's reality.
Yeah, exactly. So it needs defending when people are trying to say it's not real. Like the anti-vaxxers. I mean, vaccines shouldn't need defending. And then these crazy people come along and make it so that it does.
Yeah. I do think that we need to sex up atheism, though. And of course, I don't mean, actually sex up atheism, but I think we need to talk about it in more poetic, emotional terms. We tend to stick to the rhetorical arguments, as we should, because, we're very sound there. That's where we're very strong. However, we don't speak as well about the warm fuzzies that we get as atheists, and we do get warm fuzzies.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big stereotypes, is that we're all Vulcans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In addition to warm fuzzies, you get tons of orgasms from all the orgies that we have. That's a lot nicer than warm fuzzies, in my opinion. So I think we got that going for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, Daryl Ray, read his book, People's Sex Lives Get Better After They Leave Religion.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Very robust study, that one. It's very convincing. And to talk about sins again, I think I do. I don't know. I think I do enjoy my atheism because of the things that aren't sins. I mean, nothing's a sin. You can do asshole-ish things, but there's no sinning, really. Especially drinking or sex or, drug use as far as responsible adults go. I think that is a point in our column. So we should learn how to talk about that without sounding completely hedonistic as well.
Yeah, that's just the thing with religion. They think belief is a choice anyway, in a way. So they're like, oh, y'all just want to sin. You're not really an atheist. You just, want to do all this stuff. And it's really hard to argue with that, particularly because in my case, it was the cognitive dissonance between, wanting to sin and realizing that these things weren't a sin, that they weren't bad, and that there was no God out there to watch me do them and, punish me for them.
I think those people are just upset that they've been prevented from sinning, quote unquote, their whole lives, and they would have to look back on all the opportunities they passed up because they thought their God would get mad at them. And that's kind of a tough thing to come to grips with. Just not only being incredibly wrong about the fundamental nature of the universe for your whole life, but that it personally impacted yourself. And I don't know, you had a crappy first sexual experience as when you lost your virginity on your wedding night, and it just really sucked because you were both uptight and didn't know what to do. And I don't know, to just look back and say, that could have, my whole life could have been a lot better.
I think that, in a nutshell, is one of the better arguments against Pascal's wager. What do you have to lose? You have your whole life and all of the experiences that you miss out on to lose.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
I was talking with a friend about Pascal's wager specifically, but in general about how we need to be more accepting about new atheists. and how they are so eager to disprove all of the ideas that they had before, and how it's the first time that they've come across Pascal's wager or the ontological argument or what have you. And the older atheists, or the atheists that have been in the movement for a while, are kind of impatient at points about that, as if they were theists in a way, just because they're so eager to voice their argument. Have you experienced that kind of thing?
We get a lot of emails that rehash the same arguments, and when we see them, we all kind of groan. So, a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm not on the TV list, although I'm starting to get more mail with GB. But yeah, there is a lot of enthusiasm. I've still got a lot of the enthusiasm where I want to fight with theists, and I'm not completely bored of all the theistic stuff. Although there's a lot of feminist stuff that I'm really, really tired of addressing by now.
So why'd you name your podcast Godless Bitches? Is that the question over and over, or is it more?
You know, we got a lot of that at the first and not so much anymore. But nowadays it's more like, they want to talk about the incident that shall not be named, elevator gate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or they want to rehash that again, or just not getting it in regards to privilege, or, you know, something that we talked about that was sexist that people don't think is sexist. Just things like that.
I think she was asking you to explain why you originally named it Godless Bitches.
Oh, I was also echoing what I'd imagine was a very common question.
Sure.
But I mean, I am generally curious, but I'd imagine that would also just be a listen to the first podcast thing. So there's no need to rehash it for me. I trust that you all have your reasons and that they are not sexist.
Well, it's just a reclaiming the slur sort of thing.
Yep. I land on I don't use the word, but nor do I use the N-word as an African American. I know that I reserve the right to do so, but it's just not my thing. But I think it's a very personal decision, and it falls in line with freedom of speech and, you know, different ideas of how to create social change and acceptance.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Fair enough.
So I have a question that's kind of along similar lines.
Sure.
So I know whenever people ask me, you know, why aren't there so many women in the atheist movement? That's one of the questions that I really don't feel comfortable being asked, because it's like, well, why are you asking me to speak for all of the women in the world who, you know, I don't even agree with on this issue? You know, that's not someone that I represent. And so, you know, I'll give this answer, you know, here are some reasons why I think maybe not as many women are involved in the atheist community, but I feel like it's just kind of the generic answer you could get from anyone. Do you feel, does that kind of translate when people ask you why there are not as many black people in the atheist community? Do you feel like, why are you asking me?
Most of the time I'm glad that they're asking me. I'm glad that they care, you know, and that they think that I am someone that is somewhat able to speak on the topic. I hope that it goes without saying that I don't represent, or that you don't represent all of the women, and I don't represent all of the black people or black atheists or bisexuals or what have you. But it is certainly a burden of sorts to feel like you have the weight of a whole community on your back when you are only one person with one experience. But we just have to do the best we can, I think, to answer it and to leave the option open that other people might have different experiences.
Okay, thank you.
So, speaking about experiences, how in the world did you become an atheist?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought about it. No.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, it is kind of. At the same time, I did have an education that included learning about natural selection. I was bisexual, and I did look at the Bible and realize that God doesn't like gays. And that sort of turned me off to at least being the kind of literalist Southern Baptist that I was raised to be. So I kind of, took the liberal train going off in the other direction after those two incidents. And then it really was just thinking about it, having a natural curiosity and skepticism. And the internet helped. I think that it can't be underrated, the resources that we have available to us that people a couple generations ago, if not just a couple decades ago, didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah, that the internet's amazing for that. I mean,
yeah. I was just going to say, me in particular, I think that there's no other time in modern history, and probably not in ancient history either, that I could be the person that I am without having serious problems and facing serious ostracism, if not death by the government, whether that be left-handedness, which, was persecutable at a point, or being African American and obstinate, which I am, and or bisexual, or an atheist. That these are all things that are very, very dangerous in other times and in other places today.
Yeah, definitely.
So, God bless the USA with tongue in cheek.
Well, there's a lot of places in Europe that are doing it much better than us. So
yeah.
Yeah, but I really proud of our heritage. I think that they took our idea of religious separation and really didn't apply it in their constitutions as much. I mean, some do have a concept of it, but some of them don't. They do have the church as part of their government, but they have more of a separation in the culture of church and state.
Yeah, that's always been just the weirdest thing. How they have state churches, but nobody goes to them. Nobody cares about them. Nobody, listens to them. But yet we have no state church. It's kind of a free market of religion, and religion thrives.
That's right. I think that we protect it almost in a way, I don't think it's always been that way, but by not taxing it or regulating it or even checking in on it, just to see what they're doing as far as, how they take care of their children. They're exempt from certain childcare regulations. They don't file any kind of forms as far as what their financials are, because under the auspices of the separation of church and state. So it has this weird effect in our country of creating a little enclave, a little safe hidey hole for religions.
Yeah, and we should be peering down that hidey hole when it's, when children or other harm's involved. Yeah,
it really is. Sean Faircloth, now with the Richard Dawkins Foundation, speaks very eloquently about this, and he uses some child examples of children that were left in cars because they didn't have the correct child to staff ratios because they were religious organizations, or children who didn't receive medical care, and he talks about them by name and he tells their story. And that is the kind of messaging that I think we need to get across, and I think those are the emotional strings that we can pull as secular humanist, or whatever the hell you want to call yourself, that isn't someone that thinks that that's okay. I don't care if you believe in it, but I think that the policies that we have, because people are willing to protect religions, are the dangerous part. And that's what's kind of been hard to get at from the separation of church and state, quote unquote, perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think we're making progress in that direction, especially with the medical things. I think they're prosecuting parents a whole lot more, it seems. So
I think you're right. And I think that they should continue to do so. I have no more respect for a parent that let their child die because they thought God was going to save them than one that just let them die. I don't think that there's any nobility to that.
Yeah, there's no difference. There should be no difference in the law. So,
but,
well, we do have a few news stories definitely wanted to get to, and AJ, you can comment on these as well.
Great.
So, fuck Komen, the Komen Foundation.
Susan D. Komen for the cure.
Yes.
Apparently not.
Yes, they are a breast cancer foundation, and they were giving grants to Planned Parenthood to provide breast exams, breast health education, mammogram referrals, and they had a lot of pressure from anti-choice groups. Mm-hmm. You know, people were boycotting them, not donating, because Planned Parenthood would get, you know, even 1 cent, because we can't have 1 cent going to a place that has like 3% of its services as abortion.
Yeah.
And so they pulled out. They will no longer give anything to Planned Parenthood. Yeah, so anti-choice politics, more important than actually helping women and helping cancer patients.
Now, what do you think? I mean, if they were losing major sponsorship, do they have an obligation to their constituents to listen to their complaints if that was something that they were complaining about?
Well, first of all, I don't think they were losing major sponsorship. I don't know the financials or whatever, but I don't know that a boycott had affected them more. I'd actually heard of more boycotting them for pink washing, which was letting companies use the pink and the breast cancer ribbon logo that made products that were associated with breast cancer, like KFC.
Yeah, KFC.
Mm-hmm.
KFC had pink buckets, even though high-fat diets are linked to breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
So I actually heard more people, talking against them for that than I ever did for the Planned Parenthood thing. But the thing about Planned Parenthood is that it helps low-income women,
mm-hmm.
and maybe the only source of health care for some women. And for them to pull out of that, I don't know how much good they're going to do working through other channels. I mean, if they go, we're just going to give money to research now or whatever, that's a different thing. But, it just seems sort of cowardly to me.
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with it. I was just playing devil's advocate. I think that it's terrible that they would buckle they would give up their values as an organization for the illusion of losing sponsorship from some people.
Yeah.
And once you show that kind of, pressure and almost terrorism will work, they'll just do that again with something else, and they'll just take, as many inches as you give them.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't negotiate with terrorists.
Right. If they're going to hold your organization hostage, essentially, until you do something, then their gift isn't really charitable anyway. If it's hinging on, you sacrificing something that you care about.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even come up with a good analogy, really, but, if there was, some major group of donors or whatever, that were just give up on this one little piece of, fighting separation of church and state, and,
mm-hmm.
Or we'll boycott you, and, pressure. I mean, that's just bullshit.
The Catholic Church not wanting to deal with gay parents adopting.
Oh, yes.
It's kind of like that.
We'll just let all the kids suffer,
Yeah.
Fuck the kids.
Yeah, so that's why this is so disappointing.
Yes, it really is. But, they probably weren't the best breast cancer charity anyway, and now I know not to support them.
Yeah, it does allow us to make the decision of who to give to a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
It reminds me of the American Cancer Society turning down Todd Stiefel's matching gift last year.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, there's sadly kind of a theme going on of organizations doing kind of shady things when it comes to sponsorships and again, the illusion that they might lose some.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard out there for organizations right now, for
mm-hmm.
charities and whatnot, but still.
It's actually not. The charities that, at least in the last 2 years, charities have actually been doing pretty well. And I think this has to do with the fact that wealthy people are actually doing pretty well. Um, I mean, I hang out with very wealthy people for a living and have nothing against wealth, especially people that are using it to affect positive change. However, I think that uh, this trend of, or this idea that charities are not doing well is not actually true, because the people that give major donations are not being taxed very highly, and are enjoying fairly, lucrative returns on some things compared to the general population, at least.
Well, see, that's one thing I hear. Some people say that if rich people were taxed a whole lot more, they wouldn't be inclined to give as much.
But who cares? Because then the taxes go towards, I mean, the biggest welfare organization that helps people is the government, with unemployment and assistance for housing and assistance for food. That's where the tax dollars would go, and I'm okay with that kind of steady income, instead of just hinging on someone's whim, where they could just cut it off arbitrarily, like what happened with Coleman.
Right, and I don't think that if the taxes went up, that the incentive to give would necessarily decline, because they would still have tax deductible gifts, and these people would still, have incentive to decrease their taxable income. So maybe even more so, if the taxes were higher, they would have even more incentive to decrease that number.
Yeah, that's just, things you hear from, I don't know, idiots.
Well, yeah, exactly. You hear these kinds of arguments from people that, support from very right-wing conservative ideas that we certainly can't tax people more, and we can't put more money into the system that allowed these people to get their wealth, because then they won't, because the only way that they see charity working in an efficient way is private charity. They don't think that the government as a charitable organization or as a welfare institution is effective. So I think from their perspective, they are like, oh no, if people have less money, then they have less money to give to the only organizations that I understand to be, beneficial to society, because the government isn't one of them. Yeah,
we're going to get mail from libertarians now.
I have lots of good libertarian friends, and we have lots of good conversations. I have nothing but love for them, but we're just going to have to agree to disagree on stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Every time, I worked with a charity organization, or a nonprofit, sorry. And every time I would talk to people who identified as libertarian, I was like, well, this is perfect, because you are part of the free market, and you are what can help influence by donating and by writing letters. And they were like, nah, not going to do it. So I was like, wow, you don't... Okay, so I don't know.
Well,
I don't care if we get
anecdotal evidence. I'm sure there are lots of very active libertarian, because some people do, practice what they preach, quote unquote. But a lot of people just don't want to pay taxes and call themselves libertarian.
Yes. And
you can send the email to me. Weed. It's aj@atheist.org.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me. Plug all your sites and how people can get involved.
Oh, sure. Well, that's my email. And really, don't blow it up, though. Make sure it's pertinent. And atheist.org is the website, and reasonrally.org is the website for Reason Rally. We're doing the African American Non-Believers Day of Solidarity on February 26th. It's the last Sunday of the month.
Oh, very good.
And I believe that's all the plugs, in addition to the Rock Beyond Belief.
Now, there is this month as well, because it is Black History Month. The African Americans for Humanism is going all out with an ad campaign of, it's like historical figures like Langston Hughes, and then on one side of like a billboard or a bus ad, and then, somebody like Mandisa L. Thomas, or, Alex Jules, Jamila Bay on the other side, and doubts about religion. You're one of many African Americans for humanism. So
yeah, I think that's a great campaign. I'm really excited for it, and I can't wait for there to be a lot of press about it. I think that it's just to start the conversation. And I hope that organizations like yours are receptive to, because we want a national rise from this, and hopefully there'll be a lot of African Americans coming out and hoping for local organizations to join and be a part of.
Yeah, and we want to have them. We
Do you
take
all have
anybody.
a few? I'm sure you have a few.
There are a few African American members of the ACA.
None that I know of that are atheists. And I mean, I don't want.
So they come in and out kind of deal.
Yeah, yes.
A few have shown up for meetings, but it's hard to get them to stay around.
I don't go to half the events though, so maybe you're seeing them at events that I don't go to.
We have had more in the past, more active people in the past, but
okay,
yeah.
But we need more so that we can date them. Oh wait, no. Oh
exactly.
No, that's the
that's
women.
The women.
Oh whoa, get it mixed up.
That's funny. That is true for women and African Americans. I mean, having dates that are diverse within the movement is important. I'm not advocating for, Black people to date other Black people in the movement. I'm advocating for everyone to date everyone else, but with a little flavor.
As much flavor as you want.
Exactly. I do actually feel strongly about the single scene and the fact that I am single myself and dating people that believe in energies and spirits and afterlives and crystals and all kinds of nonsense, and how great it would be if there were a 20-something atheist scene.
Yeah, well, we need more people of all kinds.
Just because we need more people.
Yes, we need more women. We need more African Americans. We need more Latinos, Asians, trans people, intersex people.
Now you're going to miss someone.
Yes, see, now I'm going to miss everybody. Everybody become atheists, damn it. And then we'll all have the big orgies, and then it'll all be okay.
Well, I mean, I think there's certainly a tie-in. I mean, it's not just the African American community that's been harmed by religion. I think it's just about every other downtrodden community as well. I don't advocate as much for LGBT things as I did when I was in college, because I advocate for atheist things and I feel like they're connected. I don't separate my activism, because atheism is actually being an activist for women and African Americans and Latinos and, all kinds of other people, because these are the people that are oppressed by religion.
Oh my gosh, I gotta ask you, Black Atheist of Atlanta.
Oh, those are the ones that didn't think that homosexuality was okay, right?
Right.
Yeah, not to be confused with Black non-believers, which were based in the Atlanta area but are now a national organization. So yeah, this guy went off on some pseudoscience rant about how gays were wrong, even though he was an atheist. He thinks that it's not natural, and that was, I believe, the crux of the terrible argument.
And then he was saying something about research about homosexuality in animals. Somebody brought that up to him, and he's like, well, were those scientists white?
Oh, right. So it was like nationalism and pseudoscience, like Black nationalism and pseudoscience mixed together, which is, I think we really need to be mindful that just because you don't believe in God doesn't mean you don't have batshit crazy ideas about other things.
Yeah, when I listened to them, they were botching evolution too. This one girl was explaining evolution, and she said, well, you can see how people are a lot more buff than they were in the 50s, and I think that's evolution in play.
What?
And I was like, you don't know what don't
steroids.
Talk about evolution. Yeah, that's steroids. That's different kinds of workout techniques.
Well, that speaks to why we need better science education.
I had high hopes for Black Atheists of Atlanta, and I feel let down.
Well, Black Non-Believers, formerly Black Non-Believers of Atlanta, is, I mean, completely a skeptical organization. They actually came out and talked about this and condemned their similarly named Atlanta counterpart, which is, I mean, pretty much known as the wax of, you know, the Black atheist community. I don't think anyone is taking them serious. And I don't think that anyone from the outside should think that Black atheists are like that. By and large, you know, they're normal, skeptical atheists just like anyone else. I think these are definitely the exception and not the rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a small news story about asserting queer rights.
Sure.
So, okay. So this happened in, I can't see what state. Okay, so there was a bistro, and Senator Stacey Campfield. Sorry, I just lost the article.
This is in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So this is in Tennessee, and so Stacey Campfield, who just said a whole bunch of stuff about how AIDS came from having sex with a monkey, and it was all spread by some airline pilot, which is kind of some half-truths.
It's got bits of truth, right? Yeah.
So there's some historical stuff to there, but a lot of it was just kind of misinformation trying to be a slur, and that heterosexuals can't get AIDS, which is completely wrong. So he tried to go eat at a bistro at the Bayou, and Martha Boggs, the owner, kicked him out. When she saw him at the front door, she told him to leave. It was her way to show support for the gay community and stand up to someone who she thought was a bully. He's really gone from stupid to dangerous, and I think he needs to know what it feels like to be discriminated against. So this is just someone in the community who's doing their part to stand up for gay rights. And I think that this was a really great thing that she did, because it was just her way of exercising that little bit of power and support, and saying, you know, I don't support you, and I'm going to put this pressure on you to not be this horrible person. And so he kind of whinged about it, and said that he was experiencing segregation of thought. So
well, is she allowed to throw him out? I mean, I don't know.
She is. It's a private institution. I think that means that she can choose whether or not she wants to serve people.
Yeah, you have the right to refuse service. You just can't refuse based on, you know, how someone looks, pretty much.
Or special categories like race or things like that.
Or religion.
Yeah.
I believe is a protected category. And gender. Or maybe it's probably sex and not gender at this point.
Yeah. If someone's being an asshole, though.
Well, but he wasn't necessarily being an asshole in the restaurant. He just is one, generally.
Just in real life, yeah.
I have mixed feelings about this. I always try to think about what if the shoe were on the other foot and someone, because we're outnumbered, clearly. So if a Christian organization or a group of Christians decided not to serve atheists or people that were pro-gay rights or something like that, how that would benefit us or not benefit us, so how it would hurt us.
Well, that's why you can't discriminate based on religion. I mean, if there was an atheist who was saying, you know, all Christians are assholes and they just need to die or something, and they refused service based on that, then sure, that would be fine. But
well, there's a lot of, well, you know, it's just our very existence as atheists that, you know, is a problem for them. Right. So, you know, if I walked in there and they know just that I'm an atheist, yeah, they might not be able to necessarily discriminate on that. But, you know, if I said something like, you know, Christianity is a big myth, can they
wore a shirt that said that?
Yeah.
That would still be religious discrimination.
I don't know. I mean,
that would be tough.
That would be borderline.
So if you wore like your you know it's a myth t-shirt, which are on sale on atheist.org, yeah, right? If you wore that into an establishment and someone refused you service, would they be legally justified to do so.
No. You can't discriminate just because someone has something on their t-shirt like that.
An offensive message?
Well, but he said something offensive, not even in that establishment.
Right.
But
his beliefs are offensive.
Okay, there are things that are legitimately offensive, like
you don't get to make that call, though.
The government does, and that's what the government's for. That's what courts are for. And
well, it could go to court. I don't think he's going to take it to court, but
no.
I'd say that case is borderline. It's not that I don't have an emotional reaction that's like, oh yeah,
you do that, go girl, yeah,
but it's one of those legal questionable things.
I don't see the question, but I can.
Well, would you see the question if it were an atheist message or just an offensive message?
If it was an atheist message, then it's not offensive. I don't care if you think it's offensive.
Well, but if it was something
some Christian thinks
anti-theistic, what did he say? Screwing monkeys made AIDS and heterosexuals can't get AIDS. Well, first of all, he's factually wrong.
Factually wrong
on pretty much everything.
But you can't kick someone out for that.
Yeah, you can't.
But he definitely does not support queer rights, and he's
but you don't have to. Legally you don't have to support gay rights
to be served in a restaurant.
Yeah,
legally you don't have to be black, but you can't discriminate against a black person coming into your restaurant. It's protecting. It's about protecting things that are legitimately offensive, or legitimate reasons for kicking someone out versus illegitimate reasons.
Well, yeah, but see that there's a blurring there, specifically with atheism. Yeah, you cannot discriminate against somebody because they don't believe in God, but the fact that they are talking about, or that they would have a shirt that said something that related to them not believing in God, there's a lot of blurring there that makes me wary of, people starting to do this just willy-nilly, because it is more likely to come back to bite us in the ass. I get the emotional satisfaction from it, but I just can't abide it.
I think that in the long run, it's going to be the Christians are going to lose long run, and it's not going to matter long term whether Christians can. If you think that some Christian will be able to kick out an atheist for wearing an atheist shirt or something.
Well, that's going to be many, many, many years from now before that, would be something we wouldn't have to worry about. But
that's okay. I'm in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I think that this kind of, I think the difference is actually different than what we're talking. We would like the difference to be that these are protected classes and so on and so forth. But I think it's just the changing tide. I think that it is, gay rights are actually gaining such momentum that someone is protected by the zeitgeist for kicking someone out for not being pro-gay rights. Whereas in another time period, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, if they did this, they would actually have to fear legal reprisal.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
but we're still in a dangerous area, so maybe we should test the law, maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah. So, speaking of law and legislatures and things, Janet Howell, a Virginia state senator, came up with a genius thing. There was an anti-abortion bill that would require women to undergo an ultrasound before having an abortion. And, of course, these ultrasounds are usually mandated to be the vaginal probes. So she attached an amendment that would have required men to have a rectal exam and a cardiac stress test before obtaining a prescription for erectile dysfunction medication.
And the thing is, cardiac problems are legitimate when it comes to erectile dysfunction medication. So, this is that was a legitimate sort of thing to test for. If you're going to make any excuse to give someone a prostate exam.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it didn't pass. It was never going to be enforced. I actually had somebody defriend me on Facebook over this because he was like, this is discrimination against men and things like that. And, okay, to a certain extent, I get that. But the fact is that this is a hypothetical situation, pretty much. An amendment that would never pass, that was strictly used to illuminate a gender disparity and something that is actually hurting real women versus something that's never going to hurt, any men.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of getting people to put their, I don't know, penis where their mouth is. Is that a good phrase? It reminds me of this bill that was going through Congress having to do with drug testing welfare recipients. Mm-hmm. And it was making its way through and it's chugging right along. And then this Democrat had this great idea, and I believe it was a he included the lawmakers in this drug testing, and suddenly it died.
Yeah, suddenly it was unconstitutional.
Oh, yes.
That's so weird.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's a good way of putting the mirror in front of people that would, deny others' rights.
Yeah, because when you've got people of privileged classes making law, most legislatures, are white men, very few women, very few people of color, very few gay people. And
of significant means. They're not poor people most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Sometimes you've got to hold up this mirror and make it to where they can empathize, make it to where it would actually affect them before it gets through their heads, what they're actually doing to other people.
Yeah, it's really easy to remove someone else's rights.
Yeah.
It's yours that you want protected.
Yeah. So, it's genius. It was genius.
Yeah, there's definitely this pissy privileged attitude when it comes to prostate exams. It's, women have to go through speculums and swabs since the time they're pretty much 15, probably earlier. Yeah, and men, if anything comes near them, oh no, that's horrible. How could you do this? This is such an invasion. I feel so invaded. And it's like, get off it.
Do you think that there's a homophobic element to it?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I wonder why that, even at the expense of health, there's still, I don't know. When it comes to my health, I'm like, yeah, let's just do it. But guys are still kind of squeamish about it.
Yeah, some of them are.
I think they're afraid they're going to enjoy it.
I think you're right. There probably is some kind of fear, or that they won't. I think that could, be part of it too.
There's definitely a lot of stuff going on with that.
Well,
it's lose.
Yeah. They're just, masculinity, and that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is patriarchy and the cult of masculinity. That, oh my God, if you ever enjoy anything that's stereotypically gay, or you're ever vulnerable or anything, or you ever show weakness, that, oh my God, you're not a guy anymore. And that's toxic. Really, men die because they won't go to the doctor. Not just because of the prostate exam, but they just won't go because they don't, it's not masculine to take care of yourself. It's not masculine to ask for help or be vulnerable, mm-hmm. or, things like that. And that really hurts men in tangible ways.
I think it hurts everybody.
Yeah.
But especially men. You're right.
So go get your damn exams if you need them.
Yeah.
At least once a year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's especially a problem, I think, with Latino cultures.
Yeah, in African American communities, it's a pretty big issue as well.
Well, I have a small kind of health thing. Speaking of, keeping yourself healthy and making sure, it's just kind of a public service announcement for all the women who are listening. Pfizer has a recall on 1 million packets of their birth control pills after they discovered a packaging error that could leave women with inadequate doses of hormones or too many doses of hormones. Yeah, so
it's just wrong. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
it's just
so
wrong?
They mixed up which tablets go where. And so some people could be getting too many placebo pills, and some people could be getting too few placebo pills, and that's not good. And that's something that you want to make sure gets taken care of. And so and it's kind of interesting because the reason that we have the placebo pills at all was kind of this sexist decision by a guy who was first developing the pills. And so they kind of developed this menstrual cycle where you would take the 1 week off because that would be more natural. And the guy was a Catholic, John Rock. He was a Catholic, and so he kind of viewed the pills as an extension of natural family planning because there's this window where you can't get pregnant, and he was just extending the window. So he kind of viewed it as a Catholic birth control, which is too bad that it's actually not. But he thought it would be cool. So he included this artificial inclusion of the pills where you don't take them, and it's not necessary. I mean, you don't need to get your period, and it kind of sucks to get your period. So it's too bad that it's just normalized that, oh, you take the pill and you get your period anyway. But really, you don't need to. And I mean, it can lead to these kind of mix-ups where the company mixes up the placebo pill with the real pill. Or, since a lot of women know that they don't need to take the placebo pill, they won't take the placebo pill. And then they kind of get in this habit of forgetting to take the placebo pill. So they don't take the regular pill on time. So it can kind of lead to an increase in it failing. Just because. So it's kind of annoying that this historic religious thing and also poor company oversight has led, don't want to downplay that, has led to this recall. So check your birth control pills. It affects low overall 28 tablets and the generic norgristol and ethinyl estradiol tablets. So check your pills.
And if you have any question about if those are your pills or not, abstain or use a condom.
Yes.
So Catholic invented birth control?
Yes.
That's what I got out of that. And to check my pills, of course. But what?
I know. He got kind of pissed because people were telling him, the Catholic Church is not going to go for this. And he was like, don't you sell my church sort.
Well, yes. Yeah, well, he was kind of wrong. Did he get excommunicated? Because you would think, that's quite the heinous crime. All those babies he, ostensibly killed by not letting them be fertilized.
I'm not sure. The Pope did outlaw it as an artificial method of birth control. I'm not sure if he got excommunicated. I can check.
Yeah, I
doubt
don't
it.
know.
They don't excommunicate priests that rape children. I doubt the birth control guy got it either.
Well, they excommunicated that nun that allowed an abortion, a medically necessary one, at a hospital.
Well, I guess the jury's still out. Can you check?
I think Lynnea is checking now, but yeah, I've heard that. He really, really wanted the Catholic Church to approve it, and that's why they made it into a cyclic thing, like a 28-day cycle.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Because he thought, it was just the same hormones as right after a woman ovulates. So it's just extending the safe period. But yeah, I think he was just way too optimistic.
Yeah, I think so too. As are a lot of people, I think, that have progressive ideas about their church. Their ideas tend to be much more progressive than the churches.
Yeah, churches, it takes a long time and a lot of pressure for them to change.
And sometimes general splits.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This church is going this way, this part of the church is going this way, this part of the church is going this way. And, then we have a few more thousand sects.
Yep.
So you're not finding anything about him being excommunicated?
It looks like there was a movement to get him excommunicated, but that might have just been internally at his own hospital. I did a Control F excommunicate. And so, yeah, the head of... The head obstetrician at Boston City Hospital went to the Cardinal Richard Cushing to have Rock excommunicated. So yeah, there was a movement. It looks like it didn't stick.
And this was like back in
That's
the 60s.
Crazy.
Yeah, back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And he really, he really believed in his church and his beliefs, and he stayed with it. And it seems like they didn't stay with him. But wow.
No, they thought this was, a natural and messing with God's will, and he just thought it was natural because it was using the same hormones that your body uses anyway. But yeah, so rhythm method only, according to the
Actually, I will correct you a little bit there.
Oh, okay.
Catholics, okay, the rhythm method was developed in the 30s by a doctor, and it relies only on the calendar. Mm-hmm. Catholics and other people, too, use natural family planning now, which still has the disadvantages, but it is a little bit more scientific.
Yeah, now you gotta check your cervical mucus. That's much more pleasant. Yeah.
I did not expect cervical mucus to enter the conversation, but here it is.
Yeah, neither did I. But yeah, you still have to abstain, and if you have any doubt at all about if you're observing your fertility signs correctly, you could be in trouble. So it's still not a great method, but it's not the rhythm method, and they get kind of pissed when you call it the rhythm method. So yeah, whatever.
It's
that strikes.
It's the stick your fingers in your vagina method. Is that better, Catholics?
Well, there's nothing wrong with sticking your fingers in your vagina.
Okay.
I just want to come out and promote that.
Okay.
That strikes me as quite the superficial difference between the two methods. Kind of like Jonah was in a big fish, not a whale kind of thing. That doesn't really change anything.
Okay, well, the difference between just counting days and actually using temperature and cervical mucus is many percentage points in, actual efficacy, effectiveness. Yeah. So, it's a very unforgiving method that I wouldn't promote for general use. But I will go ahead and say I observe my fertility signs. I do not use that as my only method, but I do observe them.
Today we learned.
Right. Well, there you go. And I have to go check my pills.
Yes. So yeah, we got all the way from here's AJ Johnson with American Atheists to cervical mucus.
I feel like I know you both so much better now.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any more news stories, Lynnea?
I have one small thing.
Okay.
Oh, wait, actually, I've got two small things.
That's what she said. I don't even know where we're going. Go ahead.
Okay. So the American Family Association is pissed off that JCPenney is hiring Ellen DeGeneres to be their spokesperson.
Oh, no.
Because she's the gay.
So gay people can't shop at JCPenney's, or of course they shop at more fashionable places.
JCPenney's.
Yeah.
So just because she's gay, she can't, like, represent anything or endorse anything.
Nope. Well, they don't want gay people to be mainstream. So they're pissed off because she's being... yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she could be a role model for children, and who would want that?
Oh, yeah. Can't have that.
Yeah, well... So I think they're trying to do some kind of boycott. So...
Yeah, that won't work.
I don't know. I wouldn't shop at JCPenney's anyway, so I don't know if I'm going to combat that, but whatever. Okay.
Well, are they part of the group that that cares about the Happy Holidays versus Merry Christmas thing?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, there you go. It seems like another, trying to get in your pocket.
They're calling for a boycott every week of something, especially the Girl Scout cookies, which we've talked about before. Mm-hmm. So everybody should go buy Girl Scout cookies. They're yummy.
I bought some.
Yeah.
And I never buy Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So this is kind of a thing that I don't agree with, but I think we should cover.
Mm-hmm.
The Dutch then plans to put a ban on Muslim face veils next year. So it still needs to be voted on. It still needs to go to the House or something, in both houses of Parliament. But it would say that you can't wear a veil in public. You can wear it in private places, you can wear it in church, but not when you're out and about. And that seems kind of sketchy. And there's an exclusion for holiday wear, like Santa Claus face outfits, like beards and that kind of stuff. But it's to prevent people from concealing their identity in order to do harm. And they're saying that you should be able to look at each other's faces and recognize each other when you meet in public. And that's their reason for making this ban.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. It's kind of complex. I mean, I think because I do see it's a security issue. I mean, a face is completely different than just covering your hair or body. If Muslim women are allowed to walk around with face veils, then anybody can, and anybody could conceal their identity for any reason. And,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, you go ahead. I've been talking.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, this is of course like France's law against it. I believe theirs is against any religious expression or some like religious symbolism or something like that. So they have it more vague, so it could sort of apply to a cross, but it doesn't. So I think they did a better job of at least couching the fact that they were targeting their Muslim population, even though everyone kind of knew that was what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that I agree with the law to a certain extent. I agree with it in terms of travel. I think that before you get on an airplane, you should have to show your face and that kind of thing, or a train or any kind of public transportation. But it does kind of rub me the wrong way that they're saying that just in public in general, although I do understand the safety, issue.
I think one of the big issues is this just going to hurt those women more? Are they going to be, locked in their houses from then on because their male relatives will not let them go out without the face veil?
Yeah. I just hate the whole thing. I hate that they have to cover their faces, and I hate that they themselves defend that.
Yeah, a lot of them do.
Well, when you are a person who is being told what to do and you're being controlled by this society or by this one person, the one thing that you really need in your life is self-agency and someone telling you have the ability to decide what you want to do. And sometimes people make the wrong decision and, say, I really like this oppressive gear, I want to keep it. Or I really like being in this abusive relationship, I'm going to stay. And that's sad. And I talk with people all the time who, desperately want to stay in these bad situations. But, they need right then to be told, well, that's your decision and it's your life and you have the ability to choose what you want. And then that can take some time to sink in. But, you know, someone else coming and saying, well, they're wrong, they can't tell you what to do, we can tell you what to do, doesn't help. It doesn't help those individuals who are being oppressed. So I know for sure that this is kind of a sucky thing for them, because now they just have someone else who's controlling them and telling them what they can and can't wear.
Well, on the flip side of, I guess, Beth's argument, I think that it could bring more women out of their homes if they are kept there now anyway. Theoretically, I'm just trying to find an upshot to that, because it would be terrible to have this kind of law have that kind of I don't know reaction or implication in the community, where it doesn't it doesn't help anyone. It just drives them further into the background.
Yeah, and I just don't know. I mean, there's different historical precedents for things. I mean, we know that this is targeting Muslim women who already don't have much agency. But in the U.S., there's lots of states that have anti-mask laws that targeted the KKK.
Yeah.
So...
And they're still in effect, and...
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know. So, you know...
I did not know that.
You know, it is one thing. What kinds of people are concealing their identity? What needs to be addressed? And the thing is, it's going to have unintended consequences either way.
Well, the thing is, like, don't you think someone should have the right to wear a KKK outfit if they wanted? I mean, I think that would be a dumb as fuck thing to do. But...
Well, but they can't get on a plane with it. And they can't
that's
do
fine.
transportation kind of things.
That's true, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's kind of fighting that for getting on a plane or, you know, going in a courthouse or things like that. But yeah, out on the street.
I think they do fight it, though. I don't think that they're okay with that. I don't think that they're okay with having to have their identity or their, I don't know, whatever they would call that, their purity exposed, or, you know, what have you. Even for those situations, I guess I think there is a bit of pushback even in security situations.
What if we had some kind of like Gattaca thing where we just took blood samples of people's fingers?
Oh my god. Yeah, let's not have that.
That would get around it.
Then we just find a way to have little inserts of someone else's blood right under the skin or something like that. Or I like to think we would be that smart and ingenious.
Yeah. Well, this is another very long show. So, you were done with your things?
Yeah, that's all I have.
All right, AJ, is there anything else you want to plug or say or do or anything?
Oh, no, I'm just trying to make it up to Washington, D.C. for the Reason Rally on March 24th, and then the American Atheist National Convention, the 25th and 26th. And, of course, if you can't make it and want to send a donation, you can go to atheist.org and make that happen.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, AJ. We really appreciate it. This is...
Oh, thank you.
All right. This is Beth signing out. Goodbye.
Lynnea signing out.
And thanks for listening to me talk, y'all.
All right. Bye.